Hello and welcome to this joint ProCon Nottinghamshire and Leicestershire webinar. I'm Will Kersham and I'm the chair of ProCon Nottinghamshire. As you're aware, ProCon has been connecting professionals in property and construction since 2000 in Leicestershire and 2018 in Nottinghamshire, and we're delighted that you've joined us for this afternoon's event. We've got lots of exciting webinars in the pipeline for 2021, but we are always looking for new ideas. So if you have a topic that you think would be relevant, we'd love to hear from you. We've got an event that's packed to the rafters for you today, as we're going to be talking about the British Sugar HQ building that was completed in 2018 and scooped the title of Corporate Office of the Year at the British Council for Offices Midlands and Central England Awards last year. Designed by CPMG Architects, the building is home to both British Sugar and its associated group businesses, providing space for around 350 people. The client's ethos behind their new office was flexibility, collaboration, and innovation, allowing new and agile ways of working for their teams, something that is very relevant to all of us as we move forward post-COVID. This afternoon, you'll hear from the project team of Richard Flisher and AJ Chauhan from CPMG, Ashley Cowdery from Couch Perry Wilkes, and Wayne Howland from Curtains, and you'll even get a virtual tour of the building too. As always, we'll be hosting a live Q&A session at the end of the webinar with assistance from Cartwright Communications, where we'll be answering your questions. If you have a question for any of them, simply type it into the box below and we'll be answering these in a little while. You can also use the upvote function if you see a particular question you'd like to know the answer to. So please make sure you use this, as we'll be able to make sure we can answer the questions that you're most interested in. But now, without further ado, I'll pass you over to Richard at CPMG.
Welcome to this presentation of British Sugar's new headquarters in Peterborough. I'm Richard Flisher. I'm Managing Director at CPMG Architects. When British Sugar set out on this project, it was with the purpose of using it as a vehicle for cultural change and to be emblematic of the bright new future that they wanted for the company. Their existing office, which you see in these pictures, were, well, basically dowdy and very dark, and the sort of place that you tiptoed around thinking you might be told to shush up at any moment. So it was not a welcoming place, and it always seemed to be half empty, even when it wasn't. So when they came to their new building, they want something that was the antithesis of what they had. So working with our client, we established the key criteria that you can see on this page here. They wanted a culture of openness, which was something of a change from the current situation. They wanted, in a practical sense, views and access to nature. They wanted openness, they wanted fresh air, and they wanted a building with a real heart to it, a place that people actually wanted to go and would enjoy. From this thinking, there came these key design principles. A building that brings everyone together collaboratively, that employs low energy and passive house design principles, had, as I said, lots of daylight and fresh air, and a variety of working environments, not just workstations, but other forms, as you see in the pictures here. When it came to the site, they were purchasing a site, so they looked at a number of sites, and they chose this one in Hampton in Peterborough because, for a number of reasons, there was a nearby lake with walking routes around it that they could connect into, which they liked the idea of. It had, as you can see in the green around the top of the site, an existing landscape belt that could be reinforced and exploited for external spaces that they could use. We were able to form a new access onto the main road, which was a key thing because it meant that people could come directly to their building without passing past other people's buildings on the way. And they liked that for what was an important corporate headquarters. When it came to the actual form of the building itself, we settled on a square form, as you can see here in the plan, slightly raised, with views to the lake, which is just to the east, facing southwards and nestled into the landscape belt. So we formed quite intimate external spaces around it. In this picture, you can also see another building which is greyed out to the west, which is actually a second phase, which we got planning consent for, but it's not being built at this point. So when we started looking at the detail of what we were going to do inside, we made the decision to have a central atrium as a unifying feature, and this we called the heart of the building. And we made the decision to avoid any workstation areas at the ground floor. And we chose to dedicate this space to social, collaborative and meeting room spaces, with all the workstations occurring at the upper floors, with the most focused work being against the windows in the quietest areas, and then more kind of group working, team working areas towards the atrium. So there was a gradation towards and away from the atrium and from the lower floors to the upper floors. And I'll now hand over to my colleague Ajay, who will talk about the building and the layout in more detail.
Thanks, Richard. This slide shows the relationship of the heart of the building, which is the atria, and the relationship to the vertical and the horizontal relationship. So this is quite an important space because it links a lot of the other spaces above that and below that, in essence. So the atria is really the heart, and it gives that element of connection to all other parts of the building. This slide shows the ground floor. And in my previous slide, I was saying how the ground floor is quite an important element within the scheme. It's the main shared space for ABF and the overall companies within there. So it has the key spaces within there which allow for social interaction, collaboration. It has the formal meeting areas, the conferencing areas, slash some bar space, which is good there for health and well-being. It has the social restaurant space, which is linked to the enhanced landscape buffer zone on the southeast of the site. So, and from there, you've got the main heart, which is the atria space, which has its own cafe within there and its own coffee bar with its own barista as well. Another part of the atria space is that it also contains the key vertical circulation within the building, which is the main staircase, which links all the floors together. And that's to allow for interaction, collaboration from different departments. And we've actually hidden the lift away so people use a staircase far more within the build itself. This slide shows the heart itself, the atria, and the whole idea of this was to create an environment which was more visible throughout the whole of the development and create more of a buzz, to be honest with you. Their existing building on Sugar Way, you could hear a pin drop, and the logic in this is that you've got a central space which reaches out to other spaces, social spaces on the ground floor, and then you've got dedicated work zones above there. So this atria building, in essence, has a variety of furniture settings within there for different work styles and for different kind of tasks that people want to do. The quality of light's quite important, as within the light for different tasks, which I'll come on to later. But you can see in this slide the branding that we're trying to achieve here by using a different palette of materials. The building's predominantly concrete, so we've used warmer earth materials like timber, we've used stone, and we've also used certain fabrics there to help really to soften the space. It goes back to the ABF agricultural business as well, looking at that. So there's lots of metal in there, like an agricultural bronzy colour. So it's quite important that runs throughout the whole of the scheme, in essence. This slide shows a typical first and second floor plan layout. And as you can see, it's a simple open plan office layout, in essence. It has formal desking, meeting rooms, quiet rooms, telephone booths, tea points, and flexible working areas as well. As you can see on the majority of the formal desking is more focus-based areas of working, and they're on the perimeter of the building, and then it filters in as a hierarchy from the outside to the inner part of the atria, where you've got more collaborative touchdown points, social areas. It's just really creating different working environments for the actual users at the end of the day. This slide shows the different breakout touchdown points within the build itself. Same again, we've tried to use the same palette of materials throughout, so there's a common theme, a common language throughout the whole of the scheme. And it's just creating these different working environments for different users and how they want to do that. What we've done, we've created the touchdown breakout areas adjacent to the atria. So there's this natural flow down to the ground floor, and really to create that hierarchy of noise from the outside, which is more private, going a bit more busier within the center of the building. This slide shows really the key element of the build, which is the internal environment of the building. The office floor plates on the first and second floor, the office floor plates on the first and second floor with British Sugar on the first floor and the other companies above there. The building is predominantly 80 to 90% glazed. So it's very important, the quality of light, good quality light, as within controlled light, how that is actually filtered into the building. We've worked on the premise of passive house principles for the building, and we've done that throughout the majority of our office builds. So what we've tried to do there, we've tried to look at the fabric first, super insulation, the passive house envelope, a mixed mode ventilated building, good daylight, facade engineering. So you can see from that sketch there, the windows wrap around the whole of the building, and this is to get as much light deep into the building, and really the views as well. The views are amazing from the site, so it's to utilize and capitalize on those as well. So that's me on this element here, and I'll pass you over to Ashley to talk about the M&E strategy.
Hello, I'm Ashley Cowdery from CPW, and I'm going to talk about the glamorous stuff, the M&E services design, and in particular, how we met the client's brief, which was to deliver an uncomplicated system and a system that was really led by well-being principles. So every decision we made was considered on how it would benefit the occupants rather than over and above anything else. So as a team, holistically, we decided to take a passive house principled approach. Passive house for us really means making the building, the fabric and the structure of the building do as much work as possible in providing occupancy, health and well-being, so that the artificial services have less work to do. That makes the building inherently energy efficient. It also makes the building cost effective because the service installation is less intensive, which in turn makes the building very flexible because there are less services to alter if the function or the layout of any part of the building has to change. So the building envelope was designed generally to passive house standards, with the notable exception of the glazing and the air tightness. The air tightness was still very good. We achieved less than 3, but we didn't quite get the submarine-like levels of air tightness that you associate with a passive house building. And the glazing, again, because of the amount of glass on the building, it would have been very hard to get a triple glazing system affordable. So we used a very good double glazing system with a U value of just over 1.2. And then we introduced mixed mode ventilation. So it was a key part of the client's brief to have openable windows. And that was in lots of ways a nod towards recent BCO research, which talks about the benefits of handing back ventilation control to individuals and occupants of a building. So that worked very well. There was also a hidden benefit in terms of COVID resilience. So you've got the mechanical ventilation providing swathes of fresh air, but then you've also got the option to open the windows and further dilute the office air if necessary. And that was a hidden benefit that we didn't plan to British Sugar inhabiting the office and occupying the office throughout the COVID crisis. And then facade engineering was another key part of the conceptual design. So you've got this 360-degree glazed vista to the building, which gives floods of daylight. But where you've got that much daylight, you've also got the potential for overheating. So that had to be addressed within the conceptual design. Our approach was twofold. We've got really good solar control glass, which provides itself a G value of 0.38, which means 38% of the solar heat transmittance is allowed through into the building. And then on top of that, you've got the fantastic glass louvers, which provide a further G value potential of 0.2%. So in combination with glass and glass louvers, you've got a total G value of less than 0.1 or 10%, which means you can turn a completely glazed wall into the equivalent of a 10% glazed wall, which had a huge effect on the potential for overheating to the building. This shows the simplicity of the M&E services and how these services were integrated into the form and the aesthetic of the building. So on the second floor there, you can see the exposed mass and the facade engineering, which really minimized the amount of artificial cooling that we needed within the building. And you've also got those openable windows, which worked in tandem with the heat recovery ventilation system. And you can see the heat recovery plant there up on the plant deck above the second floor. That supplies air via the raised access floor system. So it's what we call a displacement system. And then air is allowed to filtrate back into the central atrium space. And that entire atrium then acts as a plenum, a return air plenum, to get the air back to the main air handling unit. And that provided us with a lot of benefits. It meant less ductwork, which had aesthetic benefits. It provides some offsets to that natural stack effect that's happening because we're always circulating that air. And it provides a winter heat collection point. So the low-grade heat that gathers in that atrium space because of the stack effect is introduced to the air handling unit. It's recovered within the air handling unit, and the heat only is then reintroduced into the occupied spaces. So that gives a summary of the elements that we introduced to minimize the amount of heating and cooling to the building overall, which in turn minimized the fan coil unit installation. The fan coil units were limited to specific bulkhead areas, and that meant that the general aesthetic principles of the scheme weren't compromised in any way. And hopefully the next slide, we've got some photos which illustrate this. On the top left-hand side, you can see, dare I say, the beautiful glass louvered system. On the bottom left-hand side, we've got the limited fan coil unit installation. So that's the south-facing office elevation. You would expect that to be covered with cassette units and fan coil units, but they're very limited to the central areas only. And the big picture on the right is the atrium space, which obviously provides the heart of the building, but also from our point of view, acts as a functional part of the M&E strategy. And I think that sums us up. So I'm going to hand over to Wayne, who's going to talk about the fantastic structures.
Hi everyone, and thank you ProCon Nottingham for the opportunity to be part of this presentation. I'm Wayne Howland and I'm an associate for Curtains. I was the lead civil and structural engineer on Project Greengrass. Project Greengrass was a fantastic project to work on for both the civil and structural engineering challenges and also to work with the design and delivery team again. We've got a really long and successful relationship delivering projects with CPMG and CPW as local Nottingham consultants, and Project Greengrass was no exception to that. I could spend the day presenting the civil and structural engineering challenges to you for this particular project, but there's a lot of other great stuff to get through, so I'm going to keep it brief. Feel free to ask me to expand on anything in the Q&A afterwards. The first big challenge was the ground. The site is formerly a quarry for Oxford clay used in brick production, and then it was remediated with PFA fill to form a 7 to 8 metre deep PFA lagoon. The building actually straddles the wall of one of these pits, making for quite an interesting and involved pile foundation solution. The piles had to achieve the same performance in both the competent ground and through the PFA. We also had the big risk of hitting the side of the pit wall with the piles, which was going to cause them to break off. You can imagine an inclined face and driving a pile into an inclined face, it would just split to one side. So we ended up using a mixture of different sized precast concrete and tubular steel driven piles, dependent on the location and the likelihood of them breaking and the depth of the fill. Then the site is a fairly big space. It's got a lot of staff amenity, but a significant part of it was dedicated to car parking. So thinking about surface water management, we went through multiple options and we ended up landing on a full sub-base attenuation solution where the parking bays were formed using permeable block paving, which filters the runoff before it enters the pavement sub-base. The sub-base is then voided, so it allows flow control and also for conveyancing, reducing some pipe runs. But it's a big plus for both water quality and for limiting the amount of PFA excavation and disposal. We were also able to provide other solutions on the scheme, such as rainwater harvesting, filter drains, and tree pits. All in all, a very sustainable and cost-effective surface water management solution. And then the building itself, the main aims for the structure for the building, it was to provide a simple and flexible space to facilitate the M&E solution and also the high spec interior. The space had to be adaptable and it wouldn't need significant structural alteration in the future. So through the various options, we landed on a reinforced concrete frame on a 7.5 metre square grid with a steel framed upper plant level space. Post-tensioning was then introduced to the flat slabs at floor and roof levels as part of value engineering. This had a significant impact on the building's embedded carbon and also economically, as we were able to use materials way more efficiently than using a more traditional flat slab. The concrete soffits and columns were all exposed throughout, which I'm sure you've seen in the images prior to this and the video. So there was a need to provide that really high quality finish to all of the concrete surfaces. So we ended up working quite closely with the concrete contractor to come up with a method of formwork and for casting to get this right. The last big thing that I want to touch on with the building is the atrium space, which is a really large space. It's a great space. And the main structural challenge there was the long spanning stairs, which we designed in steel. We managed the dynamics of that as the design progressed to ensure we met the client's expectations. There's a lot of middle ground in where you go with long spanning structures. So that's a whistle stop tour of the civil and structural engineering on the project. It was a very quick run through. So feel free to use the Q&A session or get in touch with me afterwards if you want me to go into more detail. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Wayne. Well, following this presentation, there is a video in which our client talks about the success of the project, and I take you on a tour of the building, a video tour. The video was prepared during COVID, so the building's empty and a lot of furniture has been removed. So the next few slides have been included to show you more imagery of the building as it was meant to be, and include some nice words from our client. In this slide, you can see the central stair, which Wayne's talked about, and was so important to making the building look busy and encourage chance meetings and serendipitous events. And the lift was tucked away and is little used. The stair is always, people are always going up and down it. And there you see a picture of the lake also in this slide. And then as we move on to the next slide, I think in conclusion, as Catherine Uglow from British Sugar says there, it's a building that they're proud of. And the image there is of the team who worked so hard to deliver it. And what British Sugar has at the end of the day is an award-winning building that it's immensely proud of, and that they tell us saves them about £500,000 a year in terms of their operating costs. They're absolutely delighted. And now we'll go to the video.
So I think there was a growing recognition that the building wasn't working for us, and we wanted to change the culture, but through the building as well. So about 5 years ago, we worked out we could actually create a business case selling an inner city office building and moving out a little bit to a space that would work better for us as a building, but still have those commutable routes. So we started to build a business case, and it's some of it's about finances. A lot of it was about just a desire to change some of the ways of working and the culture in our business. We wanted a lot more collaboration, so working together. We recognised that in modern times we need a more flexible business and therefore an office that went with it.
So it was like somebody put a light switch on and we had this bright, beautiful building with a fantastic brew bar with soft furnishings, and everything was just all open, and it just felt really comfortable. You know, the fact that we had our own barista, and people actually started to mix. You know, people were coming down to the restaurant and mixing with each other, and that was really unseen in the other building.
It's felt like you were together, or everybody was together as one family, sort of, rather the ABF family, rather than separate companies.
Looking at the way that we've designed the open spacing, for every element of this building has been well thought through and planned, from ongoing maintenance for future-proofing across the board.
In the past, the 5 businesses that are in the building all had separate parties, and they'd go to different venues off-site. And last year, this lended itself to having one big party. And that was great because it was good to see everybody actually mixing with each other. It was just, the whole space was used. We had cocktail making, we had all sorts of stuff. The whole space was used, and it was just great to see everybody together.
The space is so free. You don't feel you're cramped into a tight office. You've got light, you've got air, you've got a beautiful working environment.
It's just a huge, vast difference. Probably the thing that brings it to life for me is we used to make excuses when people came in, the visitors used to come in, or you were interviewing, and we apologised for the state of the carpet and the walls. And when you come here, it's them telling us what a fantastic place it must be to work. And that sense of pride really sort of resonates not just in the building, but in what people do and the work that they do. So it ripples all the way through everything we do.
Welcome. Here we are at British Sugar and its associated companies' new headquarters in Hampton, Peterborough. And the view behind me is very much the view that visitors get when arriving at this site. British Sugar chose this site after looking at several other sites in this area, and the appeal of this site was the naturalistic setting we were able to create. Although you can't see it terribly well from here, there's an existing belt of trees that we've augmented around the building, and also we were able to create a new access onto the highway here such that British Sugar could enter directly from the road to their building without going past other buildings, which was great. A key feature of the appearance of this building from the outside are the extremely distinctive glass fins that you see. These surround the upper floor on 3 sides, only the north side does not have them. The fins are there to control solar gain and glare and enable us to have a fully glazed facade for fantastic views out without the need for any internal blinds. And they create a very distinctive appearance which changes over time and which respond to the light. The fins are electronically controlled and track the sun as it moves around. Clearly there's no sun today, so the fins are fully open, but if it was sunny, the fins on the facade where the sun is shining onto it would be closed, providing the solar shading that's required. We're approaching the building now, walking up gently rising ground. The building's slightly raised, and we'll head off inside. We're here at the weekend, so the building is empty, and as a result of the pandemic, various changes have been made to it. For example, you can see the reception desk has had a glazed screen added to the top half to make it more secure. Let's go on through. This atrium is the heart of the building and the key element in the strategy for engendering collaboration and to make working here a very social thing to do. Whenever I've been here previously, this space has the furniture's been taken out, but there would be soft furnishings throughout, and it would be full of people enjoying a coffee, having a meeting, using the screens you can see in the booths there for Teams meetings and talking to their colleagues, not just in the UK, but across the world. There are a number of international businesses here. Then through in that direction, you can see the cafeteria. That is a large area with huge sliding doors which can be thrown open in the summer, so you can access the landscape outside. And on this side here, you can see a suite of meeting rooms. And what you're seeing here is the fundamental strategy, which is that the ground floor is for collaboration and for social activities, and there are no workstations down here. And as you progress through the building, up the stairs into the more traditional, if you like, office floors above, that theme continues. So around the edge of the atrium are further collaborative spaces, and as you move out to the perimeter of the building, that's where you get the workstations for concentrated work. So there is a whole sequence of working environments, from the workstation by the window to the collaborative areas around the atrium, and then down to this floor where the whole area is given over to collaborative and social activity. And behind me is the stair, which is a great unifying feature and a very dramatic feature of the space. It spans the whole way across from one side to the other, and there's some very serious engineering hidden under there to enable that to happen without it bouncing when people move on it. This stair is the way people move up and down the building. It's there. It makes everyone more visible than they would be if they were using the lifts, and it's part of the strategy for making this building feel lively and busy, even if it's not entirely full, which it does. Whereas in the previous building, it could be completely full and yet feel empty. This one is the other way around. It always feels lively and it always feels busy. Here we are in the ground floor meeting room suite, which we designed along with the interior designers Maury Smith. And it's not simply a corridor with rooms off it. We've created incidental spaces like this, casual breakout from rooms. And the rooms themselves are identified with this beautiful lush timber cladding and these decorative glass screens which provide privacy but not simply manifestation. They have a beauty to them. And so the whole area is very almost luxurious in its nature. And we can go and have a look in one of the rooms now. All the meeting rooms are individual in some way or other and distinctive. They have different furniture, some have different IT solutions, but what they all have is video conferencing like this. British Sugar and its associated companies are international businesses, and so it's vitally important to have video conferencing available in all of the rooms. And it's proved to be invaluable in these COVID times that they have this, and they're able to communicate effectively across the world and also within the UK now. And I think they found, as lots of companies have, that their costs for travel and things associated with that have dropped immensely this year. That's a positive for them. In terms of the room itself, something that they all have in common is the wonderful fully glazed facade. The views out to the landscaping, which runs all the way along this side of the building where the meeting rooms are, and the opening windows so that they can let in fresh air. And a combination of that makes these rooms a really nice place to spend time. British Sugar is a truly British sugar company. It makes its sugar from sugar beet, which is grown in the fields of East Anglia, and it was important to them that in this building we gave some sense of their background in agriculture and British agriculture. So as you can see, the materials we've chosen inside are very warm, very naturalistic, and have a sense of the earth about them. So you have the timber staircase, you have the dark brown cladding on the outside of the stair, you have the timber ceilings, the concrete frame of the building. It's all very naturalistic, and a contrast to the outside, which is much more technical in nature. And that's a reflection of the process of making sugar, from the front end where the beet is brought from the field and is washed and heated up and cut up, to the other end of the process where the refined sugar is finished, and that's much more of a more technical and laboratory-like aspect of the process. So this building is reflective of both. Here we are at the edge of the building, and this is where the workstations are focused. So this would be an area for quiet working, whereas as I said, towards the atrium over there, it's more collaborative working. And when you're here at your desk, you're most appreciative of the nature of the edge of the building, which is of course a tremendously important design aspect. And the things we've been focused on in this area is having maximum daylight, wonderful views, and here you see a great benefit of the site was the views to the lake, and also down below you can see how existing landscape we've reinforced with further landscaping. And you have a control of environment. So some of the key features to point out here are the passive principles that we have in this design of this building. So when you start with the basics of the frame, it's an in situ concrete framed, post-tensioned actually as it happens, and you can see the columns there. So we have a large area of exposed thermal mass in that. And then we have control of solar gain and glare through the external glass fins that we talked about earlier. And once again, these are in the open position because the sun's not out at the moment. Then when it comes to fresh air, we have a displacement ventilation system. So you can see in the floor grills, which are supplying fresh air in through the raised access floor, which is then extracted over towards the atrium. So this system was really derived out of the client's wish for a well-being focused approach. So here we have great views, great daylighting, access to fresh air, good supply of fresh air from the displacement ventilation system, and also opening windows. So hopefully this will open. If people want more fresh air, they can have it. And these windows are throughout the building. When we set out on this project, British Sugar wanted us to deliver a building that was capable of having a transformative effect on their business. And I think we've done that. We've done it in a sense that because of the sustainability here and the low energy approach that we've taken, it's saved them 50% on their water bills, it's saved them 75% on their electricity bills, it's saved them about £500,000 annually in terms of their running costs. But much more importantly than that, it's had a transformative effect on the business itself as the place to be. When I've been here in recent times, when it's been fully occupied, it's been fantastic how busy it is, how much people are enjoying working here. The sense, I think, everyone I talk to about how it's changed their perception of British Sugar and the other companies, and it has had a truly fantastic transformative effect, and that's very pleasing to see.
Massive thanks to everyone who has featured into today's video. So massive thanks to Richard, to Ash, to Wayne and to Ajay. And of course, Richard, thank you for showing us around the beautiful building. I'm sure that all of the employees of British Sugar can't wait for COVID to be a thing of the past so we can get back to the office. So we're now going to go into the Q&A section of today's webinar. Thank you for already popping a question into the Q&A box for us. If you would like to ask a question of any of our panellists, please do type them in. We've got them until about 3 o'clock and we'll make sure to put those questions to them before we finish off. But without further ado, let's get stuck in. Richard, this first question is for you. So the building isn't that old in the grand scheme of things. It's not even 3 years old yet, but it's already been recognised on the awards scene, hasn't it?
Well, yes, as you heard in the presentation, it's Corporate Workplace of the Year from the BCO, British Council Offices Midlands, which is great. And it was up against some pretty stiff competition from much larger, grander projects like Jaguar Land Rover's headquarters was one of them. So tough competition, but it won through, which is really pleasing.
And I guess when you're creating these buildings, designing them, building them, you're always hoping, aren't you? But it's a lovely feeling, I'm sure, for all of you to know that you've been involved in a project that's already been recognised in an award. Absolutely. Now, Wayne, let's come to you. Can you tell us a little bit about the challenges of building in an old quarry? The issue with the piling sounds particularly problematic.
Yeah, I mean, just watching myself back there, I didn't go into a lot of detail for fear of talking too much about quite technical terms, but if you can imagine somebody at one point dug a big pit and then it was like 8 meters deep, and then they've filled it up with quite fine soil, and the building itself straddles the side of that pit. So half of it's over the big amount of fill, half of it's over really decent clays, and then you've got this middle bit where you've got like this really steep incline. So the pile foundation solution, it wasn't a consistent design for a pile. It was allocated piles in set places